Armchair Detective Special Report. Child abuse. Difficult subject, but it's about time we looked at it. Everyone turns their eyes away from it. The police, social services, us, the public, as well. We need to look at this and help the children. Time we're going to do an Armchair Detective Special Report. This special report, State of the Nation report, 30 years of child abuse in the UK. What have we learnt? What's the media's role in this? Where have they gone, the media? What's happened to the investigating journalist like Roger Cook? Roger Cook back in the 1990s used to confront people. He had cojones, I tell you. He'd get beaten up many a time, death threats and even a bomb in his car. He had no fear. This is how he attacked the baddies.
About the antiques that you're passing off, the fakes that you're passing off is the real thing. There are a lot of very important questions to ask. We have a record of you actually saying that you passed off a Mesotami monkey group for £700 at auction. We have a tape recording of it. Would you like to see the transcript of the tape recording? You would? Jolly good. Well,
I've got 3 men broke in my shop with mob-handed.
They're not mob-handed.
Yeah, quick.
We've come in to answer a couple of, or to
right,
ask you a couple of questions.
500-481.
Good. There we are. Look on this page here. That's you.
I've got about 4 men broke in my shop with cameras and everything.
Nobody broke in his shop, Mr. Harris.
You won't even leave the shop. There's an absolute madhouse here.
Is it? Doesn't look like a madhouse to me.
Christopher George Harris.
Doesn't look like a madhouse to me, Mr. Harris.
217 Preston Road.
Nobody broke in.
You don't believe it. It's unbelievable. It's like the bloody mafia down here.
Does it look like the mafia to you,
it does to me. This is my private property. Would you please leave my shop?
You hadn't asked before, and you did physically manhandle me out on camera. Look, there you are. That's your words.
Trouble, please.
The only trouble you're in, Mr. Harris, is trouble you got yourself into.
Can you get out the shop?
That's your words. Look, we put one of these Mesotami things in auction for £700 and got it.
Back to 10 and I'm going to start.
Mr. Harris invited me to step outside and talk things through, but his means of communication proved to be a metal bar.
Camera and all.
Are you?
Yeah.
He then went for the camera crew, and I tried to calm him down and head him off. It didn't work, and I can only say that if you've bought a plastic replica via Mr. Harris, believing you bought the real thing, complaints don't seem to be treated very sympathetically.
Well, Roger Cook's director took a few blows as well, and Roger himself is now recovering from 3 cracked ribs.
Man, investigating journalist. Roger's now 75 and still living in the West Country. I wish he'd come back and make another series, like he did on the child abusers back in the late 80s. We need him back. Special report. The Armchair Detective looks at 30 years of reporting child abuse in the mainstream media. It seems in 30 years, our government, our police, our social service haven't learned one thing. Let me take you back to the 1980s. There once was a time when criminals, con men, even murderers were scared stiff of one person, Roger Cook. If you saw him coming, you ran a mile or beat him up. That was the 2 choices. Look at this bloke dive out of the way here.
My name's Roger Cook from Central Television. I'm here to ask you why you and your company are breaking the law in this country and conspiring to get others to break the law by supplying child pornography.
I don't know anything about it. I don't have it, sir.
Yes, you do, because we've actually acquired it from you.
When? In my shop?
In your shop, most definitely.
Well, if you're under 30, 40, you probably never heard of this bloke, but he was good, let me tell you. Roger Cook, the Cook Report. Oh, what a man. My hero. Come back, Roger. Roger Cook wasn't scared of anybody. He took on hitmen, hard men, debt collectors, gypsies, con men, protection racket men, high up officials, doctors, paedophiles, elite paedophiles. He was there. Microphone under their nose. What happened to that sort of journalist? He was the last. I'll tell you what, things would never happen in this country if Roger Cook was still on TV. Where are programmes like the Cook Report? We need him now. Look how he takes these guys to pieces. What's going on in our country, even today, was the same then. If they hadn't got rid of the Cook Report, would not these Rotherham, Rochdale and everywhere else scandals have been looked into? Can you imagine Roger Cook turning up at some kebab shop saying, what are you giving these 12-year-old girls a load of drink for? We need investigating journalists back like Roger Cook. He's my hero. I'm going to show you how he used to deal with professors and doctors that were paedophiles. He stick a mic under their nose. That's what we need in this country.
Is now
They're too politically correct.
as sexual abuse threatens to reach epidemic proportions. This program is about something more depraved and degrading still: the filming of children as they're raped and molested. The films are too terrible to show any more than the first few seconds.
All these films were shown in the 80s. I've had to cut bits out. Just don't want you to see it.
Shirley Johnson was once a girl next door. She knows what it's like to be raped for the cameras. Her nightmare began when she was just a toddler.
It's bad enough being sexually abused like I was for many years. But having photographs taken and films made while the abuse was going on is even worse. And then when you become an adult, knowing those pictures and those films are circulating the world, that's just another trauma. There simply is no end to it.
Centerfold material either, but the most horrific pictorial evidence of the grossest and most callous form of child abuse. What's worse, copies of pictures like the ones in here are now being sold and resold to child molesters right throughout the world.
This is a problem which can affect every family, and one has got to be aware that the problem does exist and watch your children very closely in their development, to pick up signs perhaps that there's other people from outside the family taking additional interest and more interest in the children than they should do.
So it could be anybody's little girl or little boy dragged into this awful business.
Yes.
Top London paediatrician Professor Oliver Brooke was trusted by parents to examine their children. Yet, for nearly a decade, he was a secret child pornographer, collecting, buying and selling obscene pictures of young girls. Brooke commissioned pictures from this man, Christopher Hilton. He sold them, together with other obscene material, to these men, Roderick Gegg and John Wilson. He also employed photographer Leslie Freeman to duplicate and package them for resale to the continental child pornography market. Professor Brooke was sent to prison for a year, but on appeal, the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Lane, reduced his sentence by half. He said of Brooke's activities,
"It is not inappropriate, perhaps, in view of the puerility of this type of behaviour, to compare it rather to a schoolboy collecting cigarette cards."
Some cigarette cards.
Professor Brooke's material was quite significant, and in fact this album, which is typical of most paedophiles which we come across.
The judge's analogy there was really bad, but it's a fact. They do collect the photos like stamps and share them and swap. That's how you can catch these guys. Whether they're professors or doctors or dustmen, doesn't matter. They all share and collect. That's the way to catch them.
Contains a lot of indecent pictures of children in various sexual acts and photographs concentrating on their genitalia.
Last week, Professor Brooke was struck off by the General Medical Council. He will never practice as a doctor again.
Professor Brooke,
Could you please tell me how you, in your position, can justify being a child pornographer?
No comment.
Why did you not assist the police in clearing up the rest of the ring?
You can plainly see Roger Cook is the head of the police there. He's gone to Scotland Yard's top man, and he knows more than the Scotland Yard's top man does about the state of the nation's child abuse. I wish he was around now to deal with this.
For decades in Britain, thousands of vulnerable children were systematically abused by gangs of men, and yet no one dared speak out.
We'd seen so many girls who'd experienced this situation. We got to the point where we thought somebody's going to have to die before anything is done.
The victims were groomed, drugged and raped. This was happening across vast parts of the country.
It was happening in Birmingham, it was happening in Bradford, it was happening in Manchester. How come every single aspect of the British establishment treated every single case that had cropped up as an isolated one-off case with no pattern whatsoever to any of the other cases that were so similar?
But there was a pattern, one that risked reigniting delicate race relations. The abuse took place in plain sight, and yet professionals chose to look the other way and say nothing. As the years passed, the silence grew deafening.
Failed, educators failed, health professionals failed, police, prosecutors. There is no agency I can think of that has got this right.
The trial has begun of 11 men accused of sexually abusing girls as young as 13.
I don't care what faith or what colour somebody is. These are perpetrators. These are abusers. I don't care whether they damage community relations. Bring them to justice.
This film uncovers why a wall of silence surrounded the on-street grooming of young girls. Why these children's cries for help were ignored again and again. And how over a decade, this pattern of monstrous sexual abuse was finally forced out into the open.
You see, in the 1990s, if programmes were what they should be, this should have been exposed years before, surely. Programmes like the Cook Report, Panorama, and other programmes, even Crime Watch, they'd have got stuck into this. It would have been exposed. It would be proactive programmes, catching these guys.
We placed advertisements in soft-core sex magazines, repeating word for word one of Brooks' adverts for child pornography. We received more than 50 replies.
I'm in possession of a couple of Lolita videos featuring genuine schoolgirls, and am now keen to purchase mags and photos.
I'd be willing to pay top price for any quality material. I've a mixture of hardcore and soft porn featuring girls from 8 to 15 years. Please write back by return post, as I'd like to know where and when we can meet to exchange.
So it was he we decided to call on. A researcher with a radio microphone had gone ahead, pretending to be on a buying trip.
Mr. Fraser, my name's Roger Cook from Central Television. I'm here to ask you why you deal in child pornography.
I don't deal in it.
You do? You have a whole load of it here. We've just heard you offer to swap and sell.
I don't feel I'm doing anything wrong.
The law says you're doing something very wrong. And
Yeah,
you
but-
know that every picture, each picture of those little girls, is the result of a bit of gross child abuse. The worst possible sort of child abuse. Raping little girls.
I won't rape a little girl. I love little girls, so I feel love for them.
Yes, but the pictures in here depict rapes of little girls, don't they?
No, they don't.
They do.
The girls are willing.
The girls don't know what they're doing at that age, you know that.
No, I've had enough, I'll pack it up. I'm sorry about it, but I just can't help it.
You're going to pack it up, are you?
No, I'll pack it up.
Why don't you burn this stuff right now?
Okay.
Let's see you do it.
The remainder of his substantial stock in trade has now been passed to the police. But Keith Fraser is a relatively small fish. Others are not. This man is both a paedophile and a commercial producer of child pornography. He's only just finished a 2-year prison sentence for sexually abusing young girls.
The prison hasn't worked at all in any way whatsoever. I still find myself sexually turned on by young girls. In actual fact, I do find myself going out fairly often to the fun fair that we have here in the town and looking out for the girls that hang around there.
But how old were the girls involved in this?
The youngest were 12, the varied in age 12, 13, up to 16, 18.
How can you justify what you did?
How do you justify it? You don't stop to think. Because in actual fact, you are getting what you basically need, and it was a pretty lucrative trade because it fetched in quite a fair amount of money.
How much money were we talking about?
You're talking about, in some cases, up to £200 a film.
And how many films were you making?
3 to 6 a week in the beginning, but it did escalate up. And I was turning out 2 or 3 films a day sometimes.
This is 40 years ago. £100 was like, girl, thousands and thousands, isn't it? That's what was going on then, and it's been going on all the time. Now you've got the internet, it's even worse. But who's dealing with it? Are the police? No. Social services? No.
They've been abused as a child.
The parents? No, unfortunately.
Physical damage. They can be scarred for life, and they can be internally battered. And in some cases, even deprive them of having children. The mental damage, they can literally end up in mental homes and be suicidal by the time they're 16.
How many people are there like you in this area?
I would say making video films, at least 2 dozen people. Enjoying them, it runs into thousands. It really does run into thousands of people.
One of the few people working to control men like this is full-time professional counsellor Ray Wire.
Ray Wire that crops up 20 years later in the Madeleine McCann investigation. Seems to be quite an expert all these years, doesn't he? He was the one that, after a couple of minutes, the McCann said they could not be possible of playing any part. The McCanns are totally innocent, said Ray Wire. He had controversial ways of trying to see if he could cure paedophiles of their addiction from the 1970s.
Ray Wire.
Some of the men that I worked with have said that for every one of them that's caught, there are another 1,000 of them actually getting away with it. And for every one who commits an offence against one child that's caught, many of them have actually been involved with at least 100.
Ray Wire's counselling groups force paedophiles to admit the use of child pornography is anything but a harmless safety valve.
Well, what do you feel?
No, because at the time you're looking at the book or the pornographic photographs, it's fine. But then you're not going to look at them all day.
And what level of pornography will that be?
You know, men behaving with boys as one would wish to. I would wish to.
Let's say they're photographs as well.
Photographs, yeah.
The photographs, the videos are used for a variety of reasons.
Can't really express that enough, can we? It's always photographs. And in this day and age, with the internet, that's the most important part of being a paedophile, the trophies.
One of the reasons is it lowers the inhibition of the man who's using it. He actually will feel that his behaviour is pretty normal in the context of his pornography.
I fell in love with a boy about 12, and he's a charming, fair-haired, blue-eyed boy. And he's come to my house, and to get him involved a little quicker than the normal procedure, the photography was laying about, and I could sort of encourage him to read it, and also...
What did that do then?
By example, it helped me to get the boy quicker. And from then on, you see, after he saw what could be done and he agreed, because we performed the acts that were in the book.
Sorry, here again, I've got to censor a bit out where it's pictures of young children. I can't face putting them on the internet. If you want to see that full version, look on the Cook Report, 1987.
But Lolita also acts as a contact point for paedophiles looking for new children to molest and to photograph. In the United States, the only Western country to take the problem seriously, police confirm that international child pornography nearly always begins at home.
The original material is virtually always produced by amateurs. It will be provided to the professional distributors who reproduce it and distribute the material literally on an international scale. It's distributed all over the world. But the original production of the material, the actual photos, videotapes, or movies, are virtually always produced by persons who are molesting the children.
So the producers are the abusers?
That is correct.
I progressed from a Polaroid camera, basically, and then went up to a video camera and started taking films. I met this one girl first. She came along with a friend of hers. That friend introduced her friend, so it escalated up. And I eventually had between, over a 2-year period, you're talking about 200 girls.
All involved in these films.
Well, there we are. The police knew about grooming gangs 40 years before Rochdale and everything else. We must learn from these lessons. But did they learn? No, they didn't at all.
Various reviews started to publish their findings. The official government inquiry was nearing the end of its 6-month investigation.
Continued grooming and rape of a number of girls. It's believed there were around 50 of them, and some may have been as young as 10.
Committee members had heard from senior executives and managers. Now they called on Sarah Robotham, hoping that someone with 10 years on the front line would be able to clarify the scale of the problem and why it had been ignored for so long.
And I'm quoting from the report, overall child welfare organisations missed opportunities to provide a comprehensive, coordinated and timely response.
Yeah,
you agree with that?
Absolutely, I would absolutely agree with that. I think the report makes reference starts at 2007, and I'd like to suggest that that happened much earlier, from 2004. Over that period of time, I made 181 alerts to children's social...
181 calls to social services, 181 calls to the police, 181 children abused. How many?
181 alerts.
When those referrals weren't acted upon, did you take any further action?
As far as I'm concerned, I told everybody that these children were being abused.
Let me be blunt. Do you think the failure in Rochdale was due to incompetence or indifference?
It was attitudes towards teenagers. It was absolute disrespect that vulnerable young people did not have a voice. They were overlooked. They were discriminated against. They were treated appallingly by protective services.
How many turned a blind eye? How many social workers, police, politicians, even us? Yeah, us, the public.
Disrespect that vulnerable young people did not have a voice. They were overlooked. They were discriminated against. They were treated appallingly by protective services.
All that abuse is filmed and still goes to Amsterdam to be made into money, I suppose.
Many of those hundreds of videos were exported to Holland, the European distribution centre for all forms of pornography. Although new Dutch laws outlawed child pornography last year, we were able to buy it over the counter in several sex shops, including this one, a branch of the Erex chain, one of Holland's largest pornography distributors.
It's quite difficult to lay your hands on it. I'll do that and try that always, but I'm also one of the people who say I never promise, because I hate false pretenses.
The dealer, who introduced himself as Justin, offered us a choice from a colour catalogue of 24 videos featuring children as young as 7.
And then I show you how I glue the tape onto the reel so that you don't have to have any problems when you go to England and change it out.
He then demonstrated how the tape would be broken down to be smuggled through British customs.
Quite easy. Take this one out.
He was very careful not to mention the true nature of the material, insisting we refer to it as the lingerie collection.
Yeah, but I'll talk always about lingerie, not about anything else. And if you come for the tape this week, I'm working in the evenings, not in the daytime. Yeah? Okay. See you. Bye-bye.
Within a week, Justin delivered as promised. This package, hand-delivered without a stamp and disguised inside a typewriter ribbon box, was what we got for our £200. Inside, broken down from a video cassette, just as Justin had demonstrated, is the spool, and it's a relatively simple matter to reassemble it, just as he showed us. Ready for viewing.
But in the 1980s, 1990s, ITV, BBC used to show that sort of stuff. I can't show it. I don't want to show it. I'm censoring that bit out. They showed a bit of the film. Nah, not necessarily to show it. Just your mind can tell you.
The number 5 or the number 10 or number 12 out of this series, and I've no problem in setting it up for you. When are you over?
I'm coming over on Monday.
Next Monday.
Yeah, it will be Monday evening.
That's all right. See you on Monday then.
Justin, my name's Roger Cook from Central Television. I'm here to ask you why you and your company are breaking the law in this country and conspiring to get others to break the law by supplying child pornography.
I don't know anything about it. I don't have it. So.
Yes, you do, because we've actually acquired it from you.
When? In my shop?
In your shop, most definitely.
Don't know anything about
I'm afraid you're making a liar of yourself, because we have actually acquired it in broken down cassette form. And it's all on film.
That's strange. I'm seeing. But will you please stop filming?
Why?
Because it's forbidden in this country to film someone without permission.
It's also forbidden to sell child pornography.
I told you to stop filming now.
Which is what you're doing. You're selling child pornography.
I don't sell it.
I'm afraid you are.
I'm sorry, what are you putting down? But I do phone my boss and talk with him.
He's only going to say the same as you, isn't he? That you don't supply it, and yet we've had it from you. The new German film? I'm afraid you do.
Hey, come on.
As the lights went out, the boss arrived. We're here because you're selling child pornography.
Listen, we don't do anything here.
Yes, you do.
Oh, yeah. Go away.
I'm afraid you do.
You're here in my shop. Get out, or I call the police.
Do call the police. Our departure was encouraged by the strategic application of a billiard cue and a lighted cigar.
Oh, go on. Give him a hand. And immediately. Out! I'm telling you. Out.
You're selling child pornography.
Out.
Put that down.
No. You just go out and very quickly.
Put that
I
down.
tell you to go out. It's your time now.
Put that down.
I will collect some people here.
You collect some people and kill us all? You'll collect some people and kill us all, you're saying? You obviously have no answer to the charges, do you? No answers whatsoever.
We have never needed programmes like the Cook Report more than we need it now. I realise maybe he's knocking on a bit now, but surely there's someone out there in TV land that can sort this out.
Child pornography from dealers like Justin is regularly sent north to the fishing village of Den Helder and then on by trawler to Britain for rerouting elsewhere. Mail from England is rather less suspect than that from Holland. So Britain has become a key staging point.
We didn't know it before, we know it now. Our rubbish social services and children's homes and paedophile rings are supplying the biggest industry in the world, American market, where it mostly comes from the UK or UK sources.
Supplying the biggest child pornography market of all, America. Charges laid in America against this woman revealed the extent of the child pornography industry worldwide. Black Kathy Wilson's mail. She held bank accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands, ran a fleet of luxury limousines, and filled a Los Angeles warehouse with imported child pornography. Her mailing list ran to 30,000 names, many of them British.
She sensed that people were unwilling to distribute child pornography. Organized crime shied away from it. her boss shied away from it, and so she decided that she would take up where others had left off.
What was her attitude to it?
She thought it was a product that was desired. She compared it to toothpaste, and she said that it was just like toothpaste in that people wanted it, so people would get it. It involves thousands of children over the years, and it continues to hurt children. They're exposed to the child pornography on a regular basis. Victims of child abuse have often been shown child pornography prior to their own abuse, to show them that other children are doing the things that they've been asked to do, to show them that the children are having fun. Child pornographers and child molesters often focus on those semi-smiles to try to
Well, I can't believe what they were showing on British TV. I've had to cut it out. This is just unpalatable.
Very easily manipulated and emotionally blackmailed. Especially the deprived ones, the ones that aren't getting what they want at home, the love and affection that all children require. And if somebody comes along and offers them that, they will take it. They will be bribed, they will be manipulated, they will be blackmailed.
Well, what words of wisdom by this lady. Nothing's changed. That was 40 years before. In Rochdale, the same thing was going on. Are we not looking after our kids at home? They're on the streets at such a young age and looking for love and looking for affection and not being looked after.
Abuse
Listen to this.
white people generally to say that the reason why he had taken her in and in effect that she was accompanying him is because the white communities of this country had let her down. You, the white communities of this country, have neglected these girls. Is it no wonder that they come to us? It made it very clear to the jury that this was much more complicated than straightforward he did or he didn't do it. He may have done it, as he suggested, but he seemed to have a reason for doing it. Social services have let down these young girls. Police and prosecutors and every other justice agency have let down these young girls. Schools, health, every agency in this country has let down victims of sexual abuse, and particularly child victims of sexual abuse, over generations. And so he was saying something that was absolutely true.
And once they're in the trap?
There is no way out. Paedophiles will always find a way. They will always find a way to abuse and manipulate the child. They're making money out of it, aren't they? And they're always looking for new victims.
These days, paedophiles are finding increasingly sophisticated ways to get their victims. Telephone-linked, computer-based sex bulletin boards using ordinary commercial software have become the child pornographer's latest forum.
Indeed, the computer is one of the more popular ways in this country now to access people who have a similar interest. Indeed, let me take the effort. We'll see if we can locate and talk to one of the bulletin boards that focuses on children. This particular bulletin board is one which I'm signed on to with a pseudonym, and I'm listed as having 3 daughters who are all preteens. And I have received requests for pictures of my daughters. I've received offers from people who would like to trade me pictures of their children for my children, and I've also received solicitations from people who are seeking to trade sexual experiences with my children. They will let me have sexual experiences with their children.
It seems quite appalling.
I agree with you, it is appalling. Indeed, my suspicion would be that there are already sexually oriented bulletin boards in Great Britain.
Our researchers have proved that he was right. There are already 2 computer sex bulletin boards in Britain which are beginning to offer child pornography. So for those who are sick enough to want this vile material, access to it is now available at the push of a button.
I'm very interested in schoolgirls and very young girl material. Where can I get some? Have you any for sale? I can't seem to find any. Regards, John.
Well, I'm afraid Roger Cook's research was far and away ahead of Scotland Yard's. Everything he said to the chief of police here at Scotland Yard, the policeman didn't know what he was talking about. Look.
How far are you aware of the problem of the computer sex bulletin boards, which seem to be sweeping the States at the moment?
That's why I said that we're 5 years behind America's developments, but we are aware of it, but So far, we haven't been able to get in. We haven't got a telephone number, because that's all you need. And maybe we'll get lucky someday.
Well, we can give you a telephone number. We've actually tapped into 2 of these bulletin boards ourselves already.
What, in UK?
Yeah.
Well, I'd be delighted to have that information. Thanks very much.
Scotland Yard has now begun an investigation of those 2 bulletin boards. But so inadequate are their resources, they've yet to target any of Kathy Wilson's British customers.
I think that if they were to open an investigation on each one of Kathy Wilson's customers, they would find that many ready-made cases. Those people, I don't know the laws in Britain, but in the United States, those people could be prosecuted for commercially receiving the child pornography.
We've obtained copies of several lists from the United States. This one alone contains more than 60 English names, amongst them businessmen, bankers, doctors, and military personnel. As we understand it, the list was passed to Interpol, but so far it hasn't filtered down to New Scotland Yard.
Scotland Yard were years behind Roger Cook. Eventually they caught up and started Operation Oar in May 2002, where they managed to get the names of thousands of people really, but they included government ministers, MPs and judges and pop stars. So what did they do? They leaked all those names to the press, Sunday Times, and it's sort of warning: get rid of all your child porn, because they're coming for you. It's typical of our country, typical of our police. Warned them. Basically, if you're, say, a pop star and the police are planning a raid, they tip off newspapers or TV station first, and the person gets prior warning.
Cooperation for child pornography is very high, because I think it's universally recognised as an abhorrent sort of crime. And we deal with the US Customs, who are extremely cooperative to us.
And they send you lists, or rather send the authorities in this country lists?
Yes.
Of names of consumers?
Our liaison with US Customs is very good, and they supply this office, because of the contact we've developed, with lists, yes.
Well, have you seen this list?
Well, off the top of my head, I don't think we've seen this list, no.
But it's been sent, so it hasn't percolated down to you.
Oh, cookie boy, that's how you deal with a policeman. Lead him into a little trap and then embarrass him. Brilliant. You haven't got the list, have you?
It's been sent by US Customs.
No, I haven't seen that list.
Would you like it?
Obviously.
It's yours.
Thanks very much.
And there we see the whole point of my film. A UK investigative journalist doing his job, embarrassing the police, making them act on what he's found out. He's miles ahead of them. Finally, Roger Cook gives us a warning of how far these pornographers, child abusers can go.
It's like a drug addict, really. When you first experience a puff on a cigarette, a marijuana joint or something like that, you go on to something bigger.
What's very clear is that there's an escalation, and that escalation can start with the mutual masturbation pictures and actually go right through. And the man's actually told me that he's ended with looking at videos that include the killing and the death of the child.
You have said that you could go as far as murder.
Yes, so I'm saying this for the simple reason: how far does one go for kicks? I haven't reached that pinnacle yet. I don't know if I could. It's quite possible that I could, but I haven't as yet.
My God, can you see how calm this paedophile is about that? The potential of killing a child for kicks. That's what we, the public, don't understand. That's what we've got to get in our heads. There are people out there that will do this to children. In a blink of an eye, it's over.
This on Rochdale, involving the grooming and abuse of teenage girls, has finally ended.
Including rape and trafficking. The victims were girls, aged just 13 to 15.
For once, the media were in a tricky situation. To report on this story would be
For decades in Britain,
possibly classed as
thousands
racist.
of vulnerable children were systematically
There was the
abused
hub of
by
the
gangs
problem
of men.
and why it went on so long in this case. After 30 years, the British mainstream media just don't get it. Just listen to this Times reporter.
Consenting kids who were choosing to make money or have a bit of fun, as in, you know, somewhere to stay warm, somewhere to have free food, free booze, choosing this lifestyle, and, you know, who are we to stop them getting on with it? Choosing this lifestyle. And,
His finger on the problem.
you know,
This is our attitude. They're choosing to get on with it. They're choosing this lifestyle. They're victims. Talk to one, they cry about it all the time. Their lives are ruined. They're not choosing it. They're blackmailed into it.
They're watching. And he said to the one with the razor blade, he said, just hold it there. And he kept trying to put himself in my mouth. The whole time I had the guy at the bottom of the bed raping me.
Oh, having fun. Did she choose this lifestyle?
I actually thought I was going to get my throat slit.
Journalists?
Vividly the day the verdicts came in, and I remember sitting in my front room on my own watching Steve Hayward walk out onto the steps at Liverpool Crown Court and give a statement on behalf of Greater Manchester Police.
This has been a fantastic result for British justice. These victims have been through the most horrendous of crimes, and I just want to commend their bravery in relation to the ordeal they've had to go through. These are the most vulnerable in our society, and they have been preyed upon by adults who should know better. This has been a fantastic result for British justice. These victims have been through the most horrendous of crimes, and I just want to commend their bravery in relation to the ordeal they've had to go through. These are the most vulnerable in our society, and they have been preyed upon by adults who should know better.
Joking. You're forced into a trial you didn't want to do. You knew about this for 10 years and more. You sat back and did nothing, along with social services. You did nothing until your hand was forced. Those girls have to live with this forever. And so does anybody that was looking the other way all the time.
Feelings going through me when I saw him on those steps, and it crystallised everything I was feeling about the whole on-street grooming.
I would also like to thank my officers for the professional...
He had been in charge of child protection at the time of Operation Augusta. He was the man I had face-to-face meetings with. He knew full well what on-street grooming was. You saw Victoria's photograph. You saw her letter. You knew that Operation Augusta was a live and running job. You knew what the offender profile was. You read my report. You were part of the officers who authorised it to go to the major incident team, and you were one of the ones who dropped that job.
Thank you very much.
So you see, the children are still on their own. Do we care enough? Maybe the future, we target them directly. Here's the future.
Central telephone line to attend children and teenagers under a risk situation. As a result of International Day Against Child Abuse, we launch a message for those once suffering any kind of abuse. A message exclusively for them, hidden from adults' eyes. The outdoor uses a lenticular to assemble two images, the one aimed at adults and the other aimed at children. The lenticular allows you to see one image from one angle and a different image from another angle. From the average height by age, we can determine what part of each image will be seen by each person. In this way, we find an area only visible by children under 10. A message only for children. And a warning for adults.